Di-da-da-da-dum. Morning, Danny.
Morning. Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Shalom, Kiran. Di-da-da-da-dum, ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Di-da-da-da-dum, bum, 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 bum. Okay, all right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos Daf Ayin Gimel. We're going to begin by continuing to learn the sugya of misasek. Misasek, again, is someone who is preoccupied with doing something other than the malacha that this person de facto did. And as we learned in the previous shiur, no one is debating that when one is misasek in the most literal sense, one won't even be chayav achatos. In other words, a person is less liable than doing a avera b'shoigeg. However, there's a scenario, as we'll speak out again, where it's borderline misasek. How far do we expand the heter of misasek? Rava is more liberal, Rava is more lenient, and Abaya is more stringent. We're going to repeat the case that we learned yesterday, and we're going to have on Daf Ayin Gimel two other similar cases, but indeed they are not exactly the same. They are similar. The Gemara is going to speak out why we have to record the machlokes Rava and Abaye in all of the three cases. We will start on Daf Ayin Gimel to learn the Arboim Chaser Achas Sugya. Even though the Masechta began with the malacha of Hoitzov transferring, and as we spoke out, for example, Tosfos, that says why Taka didn't the Masechta start on Daf Ayin Gimel with the Mishnah from Daf Ayin Gimel and the Va'ayin Sham, the reasons, including the concept that Hoitzah is a Malach Gerua. We're going to repeat this as we learn the Sugya inside, but this is, so to say, the heart of Masechta Shabbos. We're going to go through all of the Lamates Malachas, all the Arboim Chaser Achas. We're going to translate them, but as we're going to go further in the sugya, we're going to properly analyze each and every one. We're going to have an opportunity to review again the sugya of melacha she'eina tzricha lagufa. In other words, a labor that's not performed for its defined purpose. We're going to repeat again the machlokes Rashi Tosfos. How do we teach? How do we explain the case or the underlying concept of melacha she'eina tzricha lagufa, in which we have the machlokes Tanoim. Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're still chayav achatos. It remains asur on a biblical level, and the Tanach Rab Shimon holds that a melacha she'eina tzricha lagufa goes down one notch. It's pater from achatos aval asur. We're going to learn the concept of ein darkoi bekach, which is a general heter when it comes to all of the lamates melachas, that if you do any one of them in its non-usual manner, then you are not chayev on a doiraisa dika level. And finally, we're going to, God willing, have time to speak out a huge machlokes amongst the achronim. We're going to share the sheet of the Maharam that understands bishitas Rashi, and this is huge, that even though we all learn from where we're in Cheder, it's our boim chasarachas, 39 malachas. And as we keep on learning that Rabbi Yechanan and the Minyana Lamali is that if a person violated all 39 behalamachas, right? This is, we're speaking about Zadoin Shabbos, the Shigegas malachas. You're chayiv 39 chatois. According to some achrayim, in Shitas Rashi, Rashi holds that really it's more than 39. That there's a possibility that a person will do 40 different activities, behelamachas, and it'll be chayiv 40 chatois. In other words, the 39 is not exactly 39. There might be more avos for which you're chayiv a individual separated chatos if you violated them on Shabbos, and much more. It's a simcha dikadaf because we have the Mishnah, but we're going to start where we left off. We left off above by the 2 dots, right? 9 lines from the top of the Amid. Itmar, neschaven. So quickly chazering. In Misasek, the case that everyone subscribes to is the case that the Gemara records on the top line on Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis. It's easy to see it. Neschaven lahagbia. And instead of you lifting something up, lifting up a knife, Rashi said that fell into your vegetable patch. Instead of doing a maisa of hagba'ah, you ended up doing a maisa of chaticha. The chatach hasamachuber. Chatach hasamachuber is a bona fide iser doiraisa, but you did not intend to do an act of chaticha. Everyone agrees that you're not even chayiv chatos. It's not a shoygeg. Like we explained, when you a shoygeg means I intended to do that which I did. I didn't know it's prohibited, but I did what I set out to do. Here I set out to lift, I ended up cutting butter. Question the machlokes was, what happens if you had in mind to cut, but you thought that you were about to cut something that was already tolush, that was already detached, and you ended up cutting that which is mechuber. So here we had the machlokes that the Rava is lenient, since you did not have intent to do a chaticha shel isura. It's this, what you did is still included in the heter of misasek. And Abaya said, no, here you intended to cut. And Hanami, you intended to cut something that's tolush, but you intended to cut. You did what you set out to do. Here you will be chayiv chatos. It's still called a shoygig, but you are chayiv chatos. That was the machlokes that we had up until now. And now again, 9 lines. In the last word of the 9th line by the 2 dots, we're going to have 2 other cases. Obviously, each case has a chiddush in itself, which is why we have to repeat all of them. We're going to have a total of now 3 cases in where Rava and Abaya Lishitasam will have their own opinion. Says the Gemara Itmar. It was stated, a person is standing with a shusarabim, and as we have been learning that the melacha of hoitzah is both from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabim, and from the Rishus HaRabim to the Rishus HaYachid, and also throwing 4 amas or more the Rishus HaRabim, and that's the case over here, the final case. So you had in mind to throw an item Rishus HaRabim, but your intent was only to throw 2 amas. Throwing something 2 amas is not a violation. And what ended up happening was you overthrew it. The Zarak Arba, you threw it, and with your koyach, it went 4. Similar case, you had a kavana to throw, but you had in mind to do a throwing of hetera, and you threw, you made a hoitzah, that's awesome. Rava says pater, And Abaya says chayiv, and here again the Gemara gives the words. Rava says pater. Mechava lets you learn the Gemara the way the Bach amends. Why the ha mitadalid the ha loy kamachaven l'zrika da arba. You did not intend to do a zrika shalisura. Abaya says chayiv. It's not misasek. It's not that you had in mind to pick and you ended up cutting, or to lift and you ended up cutting. Here you had in mind to throw. Taka, hold on. Taka, you're a shoygig. Make it very clear. No, you're not going to be chayiv anything beyond the chatos, but you're chayiv a chatos. Now we're going to give a third case. Again, a similar, but not the same. Here again, a person intends to throw. Not only that, but this person had the motor skills. He had the feeling that he's going to put in the koyach that it's not going to fly for 4 amas or more. He thought he's standing in a reshus hayachid. In the reshus hayachid, there's no problem with throwing 4 amas or 40 amas. You're in the reshus hayachid. It came out that you were actually in a reshus harabim. Weiter, Rava says pater, and Abaya says chayiv. Rava says pater, the hall loy kamachavan l'zrika di surah. Abaya says you're chayiv. And now the obvious question is, why did we have to have both Rava and Abaya arguing in all of the 3 cases? They should argue in only one, and we'll understand the others of this one. And more than that, here in this case, there's a seder to the arguments. As it's recorded in the Gemara, so did they argue. The first argument was in the case of chaticha shel hetera, then the schav and the chaticha shel hetera, and then they actually made a chaticha shel isura. Then they argued in the first case we learned today, Lizrek Shtayim and Vizarak Arba. And then they had the Machloikis in the case where it was the Taka intended to throw 4 amas, but he thought he's in the Rishus HaYachid, and it came out that he was standing in a Rishus HaRabim, and all 3 Bitzricha, says the Gemara. The Ashmin and Kamaisa, right? The cutting, the detached, and he ended up cutting attached. Ahucha Amar Rava, perhaps only the Rava says you're pater, because indeed Dolha. But in the case that we started out today with, the case on Dafayin Gimel, so I might think the arbe beloy karte, again, let's learn with the Bach, loy mizdar kolei, an object cannot be thrown for 4 if it doesn't first travel to. In other words, you can't say that what happened was not what he intended to happen. He didn't intend for the 4, but he intended for the 2. And when it flew the 4, what he intended happened. His original intent happened plus. Oh, unlike the first machlokes, there he intended to cut something that's detached. None of what he intended as far as the attached, detached, none of that worked out. Here, more of what he intended happened. Oh, so you would think, back inside, that maybe that will be chayiv. Nevertheless, Rava's machadesh, no. Itake intended for 2. What happened was 2 plus, but it was the plus. So therefore, it's still misasik. But that's not enough. Because had they stopped here, again, I would say, people erroneously would have said that only Baha Ka'amar Rava, that is completely putted from achatas, because still, loika machavan l'zrika da arba. Okay, I know that inside 4 you have 2, but he did not intend to throw it for 4. But in a case where he thought he's standing in a Rishus HaYachid, and it comes out that really he was standing in a Rishus HaRabim. But what was that case? He intended to throw it 4 amas. And that entire intent was realized. He threw it for 4 amas. The Mechavan L'Zrika da Arba, then Ema Moidelela Abaya. Oh, so there, nevertheless, again, Sricha for Rava to say, even over here, it's not the same Zrika. It's nicht the selbe Zach. Okay, Sricha. Now we're going to have a back and forth that we had already a few times together. It's being brought again because it plays a role in this machlokes and this machlokes of Mesasik between Abaye and Rav. So Tanan, we're going to learn. We're going to learn Chavra in a few lines. And on that, we needed to understand Minyan Alamali. The Mishnah enumerates actually 39 different prohibited acts. So if the Mishnah would not have written the number, The Mishnah would have written Avos Malachos, and the Mishnah would have began Hazoireya, HaChodesh. If you would want to know the number, count them. Why does the Mishnah have to say out the number? And on that, V'amar Rabbi Yechanan, the origin of this Rabbi Yechanan is going to be on Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis. But again, the Gemara quotes us many times that the Mishnah is telling you a number to tell you She'im Asa'on Kulam Behelam Echad Chayv Al Kol Achas Va'achas, that each one is considered a distinct lav, even though, as we learned a few daf ago, really they are all included in the one lav of Leisasa Boy Malacha or Leisasa Kol Malacha, right in Pashas Yisrael Naseres Adibris. So that was his answer. Now here again, Chaver, we have to put this Rabbi Yechanan in the context. We have to understand it better by remembering the first Mishnah in Klal Gadol. Let's not forget, my friends, that if it's Shigeg HaShabbos, for Shigeg HaShabbos, you only chayiv one chatos. So whenever we learn this din of Rabbi Yechanan, that you're chayiv for a Shigeg 39, that's because you knew it's Shabbos. And again, as we learned a few times already, knowing that it's Shabbos doesn't know that you know that today is called Shabbos. It's not about the name of the day. It's about understanding the meaningfulness. The meaningfulness, dafke, not only in the mitzvahs aseh of Shabbos, but the meaningfulness in the prohibitions of Shabbos. You know that things may not be done today. You have to know that to be chayiv for a violation b'shogeg of one or more avos malachos. So now, avaita bishlam elabayim. That he says, ki hai gavna chayev, my friends, the ki hai gavna that the Gemara here is referring to, the first case that we learned today, the ki hai gavna is referring to the second case where Abaye and Rava argue, mischavin lizroik shtayim and v'zorak arba. Oh, in other words, that his miscalculation was that his action went beyond what he intended. And what does Abaye say? This is important. Abaye says that he's chayiv chatos. So now I can understand that you have a case where there is a zdoin Shabbos, but you have shigegas malachas. Where will that be? The shechas law, the yada, the isura, again, the bach, the gimel, right, adds the letter dalid. Right, the yada lady, mishkachas, the yada isura, this Shabbos. He knows that things may not be done on Shabbos. He knows that you may not throw daladamas, for example. The yada is malachas. Eloma, why did he violate many or all? Like, for example, in every case, he knew the shiur, he intended to do less than the shiur, and it came out that b'shoigeg he did the shiur. So you know the consequences of Shabbos. It's not called a mazid because he didn't have a mazid in doing the shiur. There was a shoigeg, he didn't want to do the 4, he only wanted to do the 2. And taki is chayiv chatos. So that will be the case. And this happened in every single malach. The Omar Potter, that says that if you didn't intend to do the entire malacha, mamish, then you're not even chayiv chatos. So then the question is, where are we going to find the case of Rabbi Yechanan? And again, that's the important. Rabbi Yechanan's din that you're chayiv al kol achas v'achas is dafke if there's a zadoin Shabbos. If it's shigeg Shabbos, then you only chayiv one chatos for each Shabbos. This zadoin Shabbos shigeg malachas. Where do you find that? That's the problem. And again, let's go back. Look at Rabbi Yechanan. What does Rabbi Yechanan hold in the definition of a shoigeg? The Amar Kivin, even not mumbaz, even in Shitas Chachamim. That Kivin shishagag b'karis. Shoigeg can mean a person knew that God says, "Thou shalt not cook," and the person cooked knowing that he's cooking, and he knew he's violating. Elamai, he didn't know that he's chayiv karis. According to Rabbi Yechanan, and because of that, that was the whole chiddush of Rabbi Yechanan, even though the person knew that he may not cook, no, he's not chayiv karis, he's chayiv achatos, because he had a shoigeg in the punishment of karis. So according to Rabbi Yechanan, kivin shoigeg b'karis, afal pisha hezid belav, that means he understands the meaningfulness of the Shabbos of Shabbos. Shabbos, I may not, he knew all that. Mishkachas law, the case of Rabbi Yechanan, he's going to be chayiv 39 chatois. The other late Shabbos belav, he did not know at all that there's any isur karis, and he violated, God forbid, all of the malachas. It's like a chayiv lamatas malachas. But if he hold like Rav Shimon ben Lakish, that he says shoigeg is the way we understand shoigeg. The amarashi ishgoig belav of karis against, and you have to have Zidoin Shabbos to be chayiv al kolachas v'yachas. So the other Lala Shabbos b'mai. So here again, answers the Gemara. He knows one Isur Shabbos that's not part of the Lamatas Malachis, and that is the Yadale B'tchumen. He knows that there is a limit as to how far a person may walk outside the area in which they were Mekabel Shabbos. However you define that area, whether it is their Daladamas, if they're Bamidbar, or their area means the entire city, which is like Dalad by Dalad, if you were Mekabel Shabbos in that city, or if you put a Eid of Tchumen from where your food is, from there, whatever it is, that he holds that going beyond that is an Isser D'Oraisa. And truth be told, we're going to learn that it's a Machlokes Tanoim, but our Tana will follow Shitas Rabbi Akiva that Tchumen is the Isser D'Oraisa. So that alone will already make this Shabbos for this person called a Zedoin Shabbos. And now everything else will be called Shegagas Malachis and Yechayev the Lametes. All right. Chavre Gavaldik, starting the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Avos Melachos is Arboim Chassid Achas. Primary labors. And as we quoted and as we'll see, Avos Mechlal de Ikatoldos. Okay, now let's start enumerating the 49. Really, we can spend a year on each and every one. And in truth, almost on each and every one of them, the Gemara is going to dedicate a lot of time. So each one of them will be better unpackaged as we go through the sugya. But let's stop according to our time and just speak about a few concepts, beginning with Hazoreya. Hazoreya means sowing. And just for the sake of clarity, sowing is a word. Ziriya is a word that's used regarding seeds. And Noiteya, as we'll have the Gemara speaking out of the Ayin Gimel Amud Beis, is a word, it's the same concept that's used when a person is planting saplings. Now, all of the Avos Malachos are activities that were done as we were building the Mishkan. So holds almost all of the Rishonim. Melechas HaMishkan doesn't mean activities that were done in the day-to-day operations of the Mishkan. Melechas HaMishkan means, let's go with Rashi, and again, most others, in the making of the Mishkan, in the building of the Mishkan. Now, the building of the Mishkan doesn't only include the building of the building, but for example, we needed to have the walls dyed, colored in specific dyes. There was Tefilla Shani, right? V'chulei. And for that, we needed to plant various herbs and prepare them, turning them into a dye, and then use them in the dyeing of the oiros and in other articles of the garments that the Kehanim wore. So where was their planting done? Very interesting topic. So Tosfos and Chulin, Daf Peches writes that we actually planted in the desert. The ingredients that were needed to make the dyes for the begadim and for the walls of the Mishkan were planted in the Mishkan. And the words of Tosfos is that when we were traversing through the desert became fertile because we had with us the Be'eda Shemilium. And this is something that nowadays we know that if you put enough water in the desert is really earth. It has all of the koiches that Hashem put on the earth, and you can plant, and they actually did planting. There are others that disagree with Tosfos. They hold that we did not do any planting. The midbar then was actually a midbar. But since it was something that we would have needed to do to be able to properly prepare the Mishkan, even though de facto we didn't do it, because just like we have already Chumash Rashi, that Yaakov Avinu Baruch HaKodesh already planted the Atzei Shitim from Eretz Yisrael, Shlachta to Mitzrayim, that there were various ingredients that we took out with us from Mitzrayim. Other Midrashim writes that even though that we were in the Anami Yaakov, but many other roaming nations or roaming groups of people wanted to do business with our grandparents. And they came up until our boundaries, and things that we did not have, we bought from them. So we perhaps bought what we needed. Be that as it may, we planted the Samamanim, and therefore, in the Melechas HaMishkan, or we would have needed to. So we're gonna count all of the items that were needed in preparing Samamanim. Now, if you're gonna actually go through the Mishnah, you're gonna see that we're not speaking about preparations of herbs, because a lot of malachis, as we'll go along, has to do with planting grain and planting grain to prepare bread. Ubulashim Chazal, that the Mishnah is counting Sidura de Pas. It's counting. We're going to learn 11 activities that are needed in bread baking. Bread baking is not part of Melechas HaMishkan. So right away you're going to chap, there's something unusual. Kedarke ba'kodesh of Rabbeinu HaKodesh. It's not stam, we're going to count the actual Lametes actions that were done in the making of the Mishkan. No, What defines an Av? What defines an Av were the items that were done in the building of the Mishkan. However, the Mishnah is going to word them, the first 11, as Kana Sidura de Pas Nakat. The Mishnah is actually going to translate them over the same item, the same action that needs to be done in preparing herbs. How is that done when you prepare bread? The Mishnah is going to speak about malachis that are done in bread preparation. And there's a seder to the Mishnah. First, the Mishnah is going to count 11 in Sidura de Pas. Then the Mishnah is going to count 13 in clothing preparation. And let's just use, first Alpin Nigla, the Pnei Shua explains that since bread is the most important staple for people to survive, this is what we need to do to live, after which people have to wear garments. After garments, people have to go into a house. So the Mishnah, preparing herbs is not something that's neged to me and you. Most of us can go through our lives. We don't need to prepare herbs. But food we have to prepare. Clothing we have to wear. In a home we have to live. So he's going through that, which is he's translating the obvious in the context of malachis that we need to do. So says the Pnei Yeshua. In Hasidus we learn the same concept, but on a deeper level, that you have what we call things that we take into our premius, that's food, it goes inside of us. Then we have what we call makev hakorev. Makev hakorev are garments. They're things that we have to have around us, but they're near us, which are garments. They are a makev, but they're near us. And then we need to have a makev harachik. And that is the seder of the Mishnah, all of which pointing out that any type of melacha, and as we spoke on Daf Beis, any action that transforms something into something else, yesh miyesh, which is the most we can do, unlike God Almighty that does taka yesh miyayin, that is something that we may not do on Shabbos. And as we said, there is a consistency with this concept of transforming in almost all of the 39. When we learned the first Mishnah, right, we spoke out to Tosfos that how ironic that our Mishnah, the first is Zoreya. The last of our Mishnah is Hoitzah, the last line on the Amid. And why is it that the Masechta begins first with the Isur, with the Lav, with the Malacha, with the Abba of Hoitzah? And one of the reasons we gave is because Hoitzah is called the Malacha Gerua. It's a very light Malacha because it doesn't transform it. So one might have thought it's not that Asur. So Adarabba, to emphasize that this is also Asur, we begin with Hoitzah. That was one of the approaches. Just to bear in mind that when we learn this Mishnah, you will notice that there are at least another two that are similar to Hoitzah, that they're not really transforming anything. Okay, perhaps one of them is Zoreya. Why is one of them Zoreya? Every one has gold with it. There's gold planted in the Hazoreya. Let me ask you a question. When does the seed change when you plant it? When you put it into the ground or when it takes root? When it takes root. There's a certain amount of time, right? The word in English is germinate. When you put it in the ground, there is a certain period that nothing is happening to it. And now the question is, when am I chayiv chatos? Let's speak about a yid. He's from, he's not doing nothing. We're not speaking berisha b'meiser. We're speaking about a person that b'shoigig violated Shabbos. So you have the hazoireya. Someone planted a seed. What happens if I plant a seed? When am I chayiv? When am I chayiv chatos? Let's say I planted something that takes more than 24 hours to begin to germinate. When it began to germinate, it was already after Shabbos. L'kula alma am chayiv chatos. L'kula alma chayiv chatos. Why am I chayiv chatos? Because since I put it in a place that leaving it there without having another action, it's going to transform itself. It's going to get planted. And I did my part on Shabbos. I'm chayiv chatos. And that's the key. There are many melachas Shabbos that there is what I did, and then its result came about later. For example, the famous Shiltei Gebeiden, I lit a candle out of Shabbos, right? Women have a mitzvah. Really, the house has a mitzvah to have light in it for Shabbos. When are you lighting? When are you doing the mice of lighting? You're doing it out of Shabbos. But when is the fire burning? On Shabbos. You're not chayiv anything. Why are you not chayiv anything? Because your action was done out of Shabbos. So just remember that. So we are looking at the moment of your action. And the irony of Zereya is, or the chiddush of Zereya is that at the moment of your action, nothing changed. And indeed, there's a machlokes in the achronim. What were to happen if I was Zereya, God forbid, b'shoigeg, and you, to save me, you took it out of the ground? Another person never allowed it to germinate. Am I chayav chatos? You understand? I did the action. My action would have caused for this seed to be planted, to be sown. It never turned out that way. There's a machlokes. Just interesting. I'm chayav for the moment of my maisa. The maisa of ziriya doesn't change anything. I'm just pointing out that there is a certain kalus. If you want to say that hoitzah is malachi gerua, it's gerua because you didn't transform. The act of ziriya also doesn't transform. Okay, let's go right there.
Rabbi,
yes,
can't you make a distinction in Hilchos Shabbos between some that are about the action and some that are about the result? So when you light a fire, it's about the action. When you're cooking, it's the opposite. It's about the result. So that's, and Zereya kind of.
Okay, good. All this is just people should be aware of it. We learned in the first few daf, when a person put on the wall of an oven, he put dough. Right? Remember, the dias apas is us in midrabanan. And why? And that was the whole thing. Am I allowed to sin? Can someone be roided the pas? Why would I want to take the bread down? Then we learned, the way we learned that sugya, according to somebody showing him, that if you put a bread in the oven and I take it down, the guy who put it, Taka did not violate Shabbos. Because it never ended up happening. In other words, according to that approach, the result has to happen. But nevertheless, by ziriya, by baking, if I put it in on Shabbos, God forbid, it's going to bake on Shabbos. By ziriya, many items, we're going to learn these dinim when it comes to the Hilchos Shavuos, they don't germinate for a long time. It will only begin taking root after Shabbos. Still, I'm going to be chayav. Wow. Because my action was done on Shabbos. Even though on Shabbos, nothing really happened. Let's go back. HaChodesh. Plowing. Now, Shitas Rashi, and maybe we'll read out the Rashi. Rashi is Divrei Maschal HaOifa, says, and we already spoke this out, that there is a rule, right? We're learning the 11 steps in making bread, which is mirroring whatever needed to be done to prepare the dyes coming from the herbs. Every one of them have a minimum share. The minimum share for malachis connected to food is a groi geres, which means that on a deoraisendika level, if I did not do it in this amount, I'm not going to be chayav achatos. Chodesh is the one exception. Shitas Rashi is that there is no minimum need of charisha for you to be chayav chodesh. However, people who learn the Rashi should know that even according to Shitas Rashi, you at least needed to do an act of charisha in a place where this charisha can lead to a successful planting or sowing. If a person does an act of charisha in a location like in a midbar, in a place where it's right now infertile, then even though charisha doesn't have a minimum share, it's not called an act of charisha. Charisha is connected to zriya, even though it doesn't have a minimum share. And parenthetically, if you remember when we learned the Sandal Hamasumah, one of you guys asked, "Why you don't understand? How can it ever be mutter to begin with?" Charisha, remember, which was a great question, and it's psikresha. Anyways, it must be that you're going in a place that's not no minimum share, but that you can't plant there. If you do an act of charisha in a location that it's implantable, then there's no act of charisha. One more thing, this the Gemara will already speak out. Normally, first you plow, then you plant. So the Seder is reversed, and that will be a kasha that the Gemara is going to ask. Problem will be, this is not the only time the Mishnah reverses the Seder, but this is the only kasha that the Gemara asks about the reversal of the Seder. So we'll have to speak out, why is it that the Gemara didn't look at the other place in the Mishnah where, again, the Mishnah apparently is reversing the order. Okay, so Zereya, Chodesh is plowing with the Chiddush, L'shitas Rashi, it doesn't even need a minimum share. HaKoitzer is reaping. Just to know that in Lashon HaKodesh, the word Koitzer is in reference dafka to grains. Dafka to grains. And actually in Lashon HaKodesh and in the Mishnah, there are many different words. One is for harvesting grapes, and one is for harvesting olives, and one is for harvesting dates, v'chulei, v'chulei. Okay, but they are all included in Koitzer. Again, that's the beauty. We're calling it Koitzer, even though in the Mishnah there wasn't Koitzer in Melechas HaMishkan. There could have been Koitzer in Avodas HaMishkan, right? But not in Melechas HaMishkan. And we don't use the word Koitzer when you harvest herbs But the Mishnah is using the Seder of Pas. The next is Ma'amir. Ma'amir is gathering. Now, there were 2 times that people gathered. First, they would gather the ears in small bundles. Then they would gather the small bundles into large bundles. Any one of these steps are included in Ma'amir. And again, I want to point out that one can make the argument that Ma'amir is also another of the Lamates Malachis in which you're not really transforming anything. Right? Detaching, I get it. Before it was attached, now it's detached. The gathering. Okay. Next, hadash. Dash is threshing. Threshing is that you have in the ears, you have the kernels, and you want to separate. So there's going to be various steps in the separation process, and many of them will be an av for themselves. First is threshing. Then after the threshing is, you do a general separating called hazoida. Winnowing means that you would take a shovel, you would put in the shovel everything you have on the ground, and there is the ears, you have the kernels, they're already physically separated, but they're all famished, and you throw them up into the ear, and if there is a pleasant wind which will be strong enough to blow away that which weighs less, wind that's not strong enough, that which weighs more, the kernels weigh more than the shaft, so the shaft, the klippas, the ears will be blown away. What's going to fall back down will be the kernel, so that's one step in the separating. Then you have another more greater step called boiler selecting. We're going to go through in details every one of the Gemara. Then afterwards you have grinding, toiching. Then after you have the grinding into flour, you have meraket, you have sifting. Again, because there is some impurity, whole bran that you want out. Then you have halosh, you have the kneading, which is when you add the water and you start to mix it together, it becomes one gush, the flour and the water. And then you have the ha'oifa, you have baking. And with this, we conclude the 11, the Sidur of the Pas. And here is on oifa, Rashi Zogt, that I'm just reading inside the last few lines of Rashi, V'shiurim shel elu ki groi geres, chutz mechoyresh de b'chal shehu. Okay, and he goes that we'll find that later in the Gemara on Daf Kov Gimel. Now we're going on to clothing preparation. Clothing preparation is also included in Melechas HaMishkan. Melechas HaMishkan taken means the building of, but it doesn't mean the building of the building. The building of everything that was needed in Avodas Hashem in the Mishkan, including the Bigdei Kahanim. So first you have the shearing, the cutting, it's called shearing, the wool off the lamb. Then you have a hamalabna, you have to whiten it. Whitening it doesn't mean to dye it in the color white. Whitening means to properly wash it. Then this is how the clothing were prepared. Then you have a hamanatzpa, you disentangle it. It's very entangled, you have to disentangle it. Then v'hatzoiva, you dye it with the color that's needed. Then you have a toiva, you have to spin it. You're spinning it, you're making them into a thread. And now we're going to go to 3 steps in the weaving process. Okay, for those of us who learned Mishnah, so we learned this in the yeshiva, or if you have the pictures, these are very easy steps. We're going to explain it better tomorrow on Daf Ayin Daled when the Gemara goes into greater detail. But the types of machineries, the instruments that they had in weaving a garment. So v'hamesech means mounting, preparing the warp threads for the weaving. And we'll speak out that was you were wrapping the warp threads on the warp beam. That's the mesech. The ha'oisa beis batinidin, setting up 2 heddles. Okay, placing 2 threads through the heddle eyes. And if you have a picture, we'll speak about this more tomorrow. That's step number 2 in the weaving, and then the weaving itself. And then right, what's a v'ha'oidik? Okay. Now, when the Mishnah says shtei batinidin, this is the first time that the Mishnah explicitly gives a shiur, a minimum amount. We're going to learn the Mishnah explicitly giving a shiur a few times. What we already mentioned, everyone agrees, whether you agree with Rashi on chodesh or not, but in all of the avos malachos, mida ayraisa, there is a minimum shiur. Elu dvarim sheyesh lahem shiur. And if you do less than the shiur, even according to Rabbi Yechanan, that it's chayiv min ha-Torah, but you're not chayiv a carbon, you're not chayiv chatos. So the question is, why is it that the Mishnah doesn't mention the groi geres? Ki groi geres. Why is it that when it comes to the weaving, Here the Mishnah speaks about the minimum quantity. It's not the only place, but it's in various places. That's a big question. Tosfos just is ma'ored the question. This is the second Tosfos of the Amid, the little Tosfos. Ha'isa shnei batinidin. So Tosfos says that Sarach Lefaresh will have to explain. He doesn't say what. Lama Perish Khan here, and then it's not the only ba'oirig, u'bepoitseo, u'betoifer b'koisev, as we'll learn the Mishnah soon, the shiur more tfei than in the other of the obvious malachis, even though they have shiurim, Rabbeinu HaKadosh didn't speak it out. Why? Tzarech lefarish. The Sfas Emes is mefarish. And he says, Gavaldik, these are the words. There are certain activities, let's speak about baking. You have the maisa of baking, you have the maisa of bishul, which they did by the samamanim, by the herbs, and then you have, did you do baking kishir? Did you bake the minimum amount or did you bake less than the minimum amount? When a person baked less than the gregeres, what they did was baking. When it comes to weaving, let's begin with this, the definition of weaving is using 2 threads. In other words, the number is not a quantitative number, it's a qualitative number. You don't have a maisa of weaving, or when it comes, let's say, to writing. God did not prohibit writing letters. God prohibited writing words. The definition of a word is, if it's one, it's not a word, one is a letter. So that's his insight, which is beautiful, that the Mishnah has to speak out the shiur when the shiur makes the malacha, not gives you the quantity of the malacha. It's running late, let's go quickly inside. Okay, so then ha-poitseya shnei chutim, removing. A lot of the malachas of the Mishkan is doing it and undoing it. And many times they needed to undo it, removing threads of a garment. Ha-koisher, v'hamativ, tying and untying a knot, tying a knot and untying a knot. So where was it? Everything, the malachas HaMishkan, they would have to catch the chilazoin to have the color that was needed, right? For many of the big day HaMishkan and for the coverings of the Mishkan. And when you catch the chilazon, you needed nets. And in the making of the nets, you have to tie nets, you have to untie the nets. Now we're going to the curtains. Sewing 2 stitches. Here again, 2. 2 is the defining sewing. And hakrideya, ripping, almenas litvar state firois. Any undoing activity, if it's just mikalkel, you'll be exempt. But if it's being done in order for you later to do an important tikun, then it's part of the avos. Then they needed to trap deers or trap other animals for their hides. So the hatzatzvi trapping, I just want to point out that trapping l'chayre is another malacha that you can call gerua. What are you changing exactly? You're not transforming it, but look, trapping. Then shoichtoi, oh, that's a change. It was living, now it's not. We'll see that it's not only when you take its life out, but any blood removal is included in shoichtoi. Vahamavshitoi is skinning. Vahamolcha is salting. Salting is the first step in tanning. First white line in the Amid. Vahama'abedes oiroi, tanning its hide. The Gemara is going to ask that molchoi is part of ibud. It's the first step of tanning. And the Gemara indeed is going to say that from hamolchoi and hama'abed, one of these 2 have to be removed. So where do you have the 39? When you remove one of these 2, what the Gemara is going to put in is sirtut, which is tracing lines into parchments, as we have to do when we write stam. Again, everything else will be better explained in the Gemara. Hamamachkoi means smoothing out the leather. Smoothing out the leather, beginning with scraping off its hairs. But the kavanah is to smooth it out. Cutting it to the size that you need, not stam cutting kilkul, but you need a specific size. Again, here you have the shiur. Writing 2 letters means the isur is writing a word. The definition of a word is 2 letters or more. And you're erasing not as a maisa of destruction of kilkul, but as a maisa of tikkun, because you are erasing in order to write in this location 2 letters or more. Then you have pashut building. Now we're moving on, mice, or the writing, just the writing, that after you have the pnimi and you have the makiv HaKarev, then there's a concept of communication. That's writing. And then you have now the makiv HaRachik, which is habayna, you're building, you're demolishing. And again, it's an act of demolition, not lekilkul, Why the Mishnah doesn't speak it out? Good, but this is the Mishnah. Hamachaba extinguishing, hamaver kindling. That's the ha'ara that the Gemara is going to ask. Zoreya and Chodesh, it should have been Chodesh and Zoreya. L'chura, the Gemara should have asked the same question on hamachaba v'hamaver, and the Gemara doesn't. Something to bring up, because really the Seder is normally you kindle, you light, and then you extinguish, but the Seder is the opposite. And now b'hamaka b'patish, striking the final blow, the maka b'patish, how borrowed is this term used throughout. And the final line in the Mishnah, we're up to number 39. And hamoitzi medashos ledashos, transferring medashos ledashos. Mashma, the Mishnah is not referring to carrying daladamas b'reshus arabim, because you are in the same reshus. And we'll indeed see that according to most, carrying daladamas is not counted in the 39. It's taka hilcha says halacha l'moshe mesinai, but I will leave that for later. And the Mishnah concludes, Harei elu avos melachos arbaim chasar achas. So we kept on learning that Rabbi Yochanan minyan olamali. Now really when you learn the Mishnah, you see it's a double question. The Mishnah not only gives the number in the beginning, which Rabbi Yochanan addresses, as we'll learn right now, but then the Mishnah concludes, this is mamish, it appears to be superfluous, 40 minus 1, and the Gemara will address why Rabbeinu HaKadosh repeated it again. We have 50 minutes, but that's okay. Let's start learning the Gemara. Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis. So here we had this a few times already. This is the source. Minyan Olamali, right? The Rashi, Litni, Zol, the Mishnah learning Avos Melachos, and to go on, Hazoreya, Ba'achodesh. Ba'anan Chazina I Arboin Chasar Achas Ninu. Answers the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, to tell you, She'im, Asa'an, Kulam, Behelam Echad. As long as it was Subdain Shabbos, if it's only Shigagas Melachos, then you're Chayev HaKolachas Va'achas. And again, that will be the chiddush that hopefully we'll get to today. At Kum Tov Chais, it sounds like that the max you can ever bring are 39, and we'll see perhaps, according to some, B'shitas Rashi, it's really more than that. And now let's start taking apart each and every one, and we'll see that every Av really is part of a group of the same Av. Not the way people, Av and Tulda, you have that also. There's an Av and an Av of the same Av. Says the Gemara Hazoreya. So Michdi, behold, right? Michrav Korvei Bereisha. First, generally a person has to plow first, because you have to make the ground soft, and then you plant. So the Seder is reversed. So Litni Chodesh, but Litni Zoireya. Let's chop at least one Tosfos. We spoke it out already. The top Tosfos. L'shayich l'meidei kache b'hadik tani hamachaba bereisha v'hader hamaver. The Gemara is not going to ask it on the extinguishing and the kindling. Why? The hache kol sedura the pasnakat kiseder, because later on in the Mishnah there isn't that much of an order. Here that we're going through a seder of pas, and every single one other than this one is in the right order. So here is the anti-order. It's much more of a problem. It sticks out. Hamachaba v'hamaver is the only time the Mishnah is speaking about making fire. So it's not in the context of others. So normally first you kindle and then you put out. But who knows? Maybe you didn't light the fire. Maybe someone else lit the fire and you're first going to put it out. Doesn't bother us. But now that we are mentioning these two in the set of 11, and all of them are following the order of a planter, and I'll tell you even more than that, just to do one more ha'ara, that the Mishnah uses the words hazoreya. Who is the hazoreya referring to? The person. Just to know that when the Rambam enumerates the Lametes, he doesn't speak about the person, he speaks about the action. The Rambam, when he counts them, he says ziriya, charisha. Here now we're speaking on the Adam, hazoreya, hachodesh. And if you're going through the other of the 11, Beseder, that's the Gemara's kasha. Answers the Gemara that our Tana be'eretz Yisrael koi. The Tana is living in the Holy Land. And what's in the Holy Land? The land is so hard that you have to do 2 acts of plowing. There's the plowing that you do before the Zeriya, which is the Iker plowing, and then you put a seed in, and then it's not enough. The earth is so hard, the earth doesn't even cover the seed. So you have to do Nocha Charisha, Pasha, to have the seed buried in the ground. That's a lesser Charisha. One might have thought that the second Charisha, Kala, is not a biblical violation. So Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the first Charisha is for sure also. Is telling again, it's not Tanach Yisrael Koi. And there, the Zara Beresha of the Karvi. Zara Beresha doesn't mean you begin with Zriya. You begin with Harisha. But even after the Zriya, there's yet a second post Zriya Harisha. So therefore, the Chiddush is that even the second Harisha is a biblical Av violation. Says the Gemara Tana Herzachai, my friends. We have the following in the Braisa, that if you are Zoireya, Zoireya is planting seeds, or really in English, it's sowing. Hazoimer means pruning. Now, interestingly, all of what we will enumerate now are activities for something to grow. All of them, aside of pruning, is you're doing a positive action. You're putting something in the ground. You're putting a sapling in the ground. Zoimer means you're removing some of the branches. You're taking something off. The reason why you are taking something, you're trimming, is because through the action of trimming, whatever remains will grow more and grow better. Just to point out that you're going in the opposite direction. But it's also included here. Hazoimer and pruning. Hanoiteya means planting a sapling, right? Sowing a seed, noiteya, planting a sapling. Hamavrich, right? That's the whole Hasidus, the Lashon Bracha. Hamavrich means that people would propagate, or in simple English, they would bend one of the vines, taking it into the ground. And after that takes root in the ground, then they would cut it off from the rest of the vine. You have yourself a new vine. So again, you're planting, but you're not planting like you planted a sapling, that the sapling prior to the planting is completely detached. No, this is already attached, but you're making noch an attachment. If we're grafting, taking a branch of one tree that's detached from one tree, and you're grafting it in the other tree, says the Tana, Kulan, Milacha Achasein. They are all the same Milacha. They are all included in the Av of Zoireya, Emes. Again, Rashi is so gavalik, is Chaval Azman, that Rashi says, what? Nish Allah. Zoimer is a tulda. So how do we define the tulda? A tulda is I'm doing something for the same purpose, for the same tzricha legufa, but I'm going in the opposite direction. Putting a seed in the ground and putting a sapling in the ground is the same Av. The Mishnah is focusing on what is done, the Sidura de Pas. But the words Hazoireya is an Av and Hanoiteya is an Av. Hazoimer is a tulda of sowing. Why is Zoimer a tulda? Because you're not putting in, you are removing. But since the purpose of removing is for the tree to grow better and stronger, so you're doing it for the same purpose. That's the definition of a tulda. It's a different action for the same purpose.
Rabbi, why by soister and MERCAVA? Those are also opposites, and yet we.
Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. Oh, okay, good. Now, my Kumash Malon, what is the Braisa trying to tell you? So that's very important. When we're introducing the concept that you can have various activities that are all the same Av, the Mishnah speaks one from the group, but they are from the same Av. That's the Kumash Malon. That if a person behelam echad, if he did Zoireya and Zoimer and Ateya Mavrach Markiv, he's chayv one. Because some of them are called an Av. Yeah, some of them are called an Av, but they are all part of one of the 39. 1 second. Hazoimer, one who prunes a tree, he's chayiv. That's a tulda of noiteya, as we mentioned. And the hanoiteya, the hamavrich, the hamarkiv chayiv, because this is included in Zoireya, which is the one the Mishnah mentions. So the Gemara says, hold on. Mishum Zoireya in, Mishum Noiteya lo. We just learned a Braisa that Noiteya is coined as an Av. So why are you saying it's Mishum Zoireya? Says the Gemara, there are two steps here. Ema af Mishum Zoireya. In other words, pruning, if you ask a person, if someone pruned, he violated what? It's in what category? Pruning is in the category of planting a sapling because there's already a tree. And planting a sapling is not mentioned in the Mishnah. Planting the sapling is a sister of, it's in the group of Zoireya, but all of them are in one. Not only tulda in the Av, not only pruning in the Av, but if you're going to sow a seed and plant a sapling, two separate activities, you're only chayiv one chatos, even though you're calling them, you violated two avos, which you did, because we call Neiteya an Av. But it's not an Av b'fnei atzma. It's in the group It's in the group of Zoydeyam. Okay, that's big, but we're going weiter. Amar Rav Kahana. What's going to happen? I'm pruning my vine. Purpose of pruning is to make the vines grow better, but I also want the branches for my fuel. Now, that is included in koitzer because I'm cutting something attached. I'm making it detached. That's an av. That's also an av. I did one action, but I'm doing it for two different purposes. Says indeed Rav Kahana, Yechayiv too. One because of koitzer, right? Again, the word koitzer is used when you're taking off grains, but it's a tool. But you're doing the same activity. Not even a tool. That we're saying it's the same. It's like an av, right? You're cutting. You're detaching. The achas mishum leiteya. Oh, Rabbi Yosef says, Rabbi Yosef, similarly, Haiman, the katal aspasta. Aspasta is a plant normally used for animal fodder, and it grows very quickly. And the more you cut it, the quicker it grows. So you chayiv shtayim. Again, people cut aspasta because they want the food. They want what they're cutting. The chayiv because of koitzer. That's an act of koitzer. And the achas mishum leiteya, because it's like zoymer. And zoymer is a tool of leiteya. Amar Abaye says, Abaya, Haiman, the konif silka, the third case, if you cut beets, again, you chayiv shtayim, achaz mishum koitzer, v'achaz mishum, what does the Bach say? Achaz mishum noiteya. Very good. Okay, moving on to the next case in the Mishnah. Ha chodesh, plowing. So says the Brais again, there are going to be many activities that will all be called a av, not a tulda of. There are groups. Chodesh is an av, and it has other avois that are of the same group, of the same lav. And if you did all of them, you only chayiv one. Ha-chodesh, plowing the earth. Ha-chodesh is digging. Digging is not plowing. Ha-chodesh, you're making a furrow. Kula malacha achasi. Again, like we learned above. So if I did all three, even though if I would have done any one of the three, I would have been told that I, b'shreigig, violated an av. So here I did three. I'm not going to be chayiv three chatois. I'm chayiv one. I violated. Each one is called an av, and I'm chayiv one chatos. If a person had a mound of earth, if this mound of earth is inside my house and unatala, and I remove it, so what did I violate? You can't say that I violated chrisha because people do not plant in their homes. So any activity that makes holes in their homes is already not included in an act of chodesh. And let me go back now to the Sandal Hammer Sumer, Danny. In the home, there's no, again, you're not in a location that's plantable. That's why there wasn't the issue at all of charisha. So, but in the home, I want for my floor to be leveled. And when I level out my floor, that's part of boina. So I'm chayiv because of boina. Likewise, if I have a gafshushes in the field, there, I don't need for my field to be leveled. I'm not building my field, but then I'm going to be chayiv because of chodesh, because when you remove a mound, that which remains becomes loose, and it is the loosening of the earth that's included in chodesh. Amar Rava, same thing in the reverse. If you have a hole and utamama and you fill up the hole, so again, where's the hole? If it's babayis, so again, you level the floor. That's mamish aboina, chaymish aboina. If it's basade, you chay because of chodesh. Why is that? Because the small mound, that which you put in, that earth is loose. Amar Ababe, hachoyfer going b'Shabbos. The person digs a hole in the floor of his house. That's the key. So now that we established that there isn't charisha in the house, even l'shitas Rashi, there's no minimum shiur. But you have to do charisha in a location that's plantable. If I did charisha, I dug a hole in my house, but the ein tzarech el afro. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it because I want to use the earth to cover filth. Says Rab Abba, I'm completely exempt. Now hold on. What did we just learn from Abaye and Rava? We learned that any digging or adding to the home is included perhaps in boina. So says Rashi step by step. I'm reading inside Rashi, why? Because I did not take a hole to level the earth. I need the earth. I'm creating a hole in my house. I am unleveling my floor. That's an act of kilkul. As far as my house is concerned, I'm destroying it. On the other hand, I made a hole in my house. Ooh, charisha. No, we also learned that you can't plant in your house, and any act of plowing that doesn't lead up to the potential of zeriya is not called an act of charisha. Okay, so I'm potter, and now we add a nuance. Let me give the one example. If there is a corpse in a house, and we want to take it out of the house, but why are we taking it out of the house? And that's a mitzvah of hoitzah. Not because I need the corpse outside the house there. It's because I don't want it to be in my house. So it's ein tzricha legufa l'shitas Rashi. I'm doing something to prevent a bad odor. According to Tosfos, I'm not transferring for the same purpose for which transference was done in the Mishkan, and I am, according to Rabbi Yehuda, still chayiv. So hold on. Why don't we say I did an act of boina? I didn't do it to level the ground. Actually, I unleveled the ground. But the fact is that I'm manipulating the floor of my ground. So that's the word of kikul. Hanamili, when does Rabbi Yehuda say that even though it's ein tzricha l'gufa yechayev chatos, that's if your act is a tikkun, like in our example, the house, I don't want the house to smell. And indeed, when you remove the corpse, the house won't have a bad odor. So there was a tikkun purpose. But over here, like we mentioned, when the floor is already leveled and you are making a hole in the ground, you are destroying the floor in your house. So therefore, it's less than malacha she'ein tzricha l'gufa, and you are potter. Weiter.
Considered seisur? It's not considered seisur, like destroying?
No, because we mentioned in the Mishnah, even though the Mishnah did not spell out, it has to be seisur almanas livnis. Like it has to be moichik almanas lichtayv. And if not, that's taka kilkul. That's the whole word. Okay. Koitzer reaping. So again, we have koitzer reaping is grain. And the boitzer means you're cutting grapes. Hagoyden means you're harvesting dates. And vahamoisek is really mitachoilam. It's olives. And then you have a ha'oire, figs. Well, one is not a tulda. Right? Pruning is a tulda, like we explained, because planting is putting something in. Pruning is removing. It's the opposite. It's a different action for the same kavanah. Here it's the same thing. They have different names. Kulan malacha achas. Papa says it Papa. If a person throws a cloud of earth at a palm tree, and va'atar tamre, and that severs some of the dates. What did we learn? Severing dates is called koitzer. Here you chayiv too, not only because you detached. Achas mishum toilish, as we just explained, toilish is included also. It's part of reaping. It's an av of reaping, and one is because of mefadik. Mefadik, we're introducing something new. Mefadik means that we are extracting, we are unloading. The tree is loaded up, and you unloaded the tree. Look inside with the first Rashi under the Gemara. Where does unloading come from? So mefadik, says Rashi, is a tulda. The dush, it's a tulda of threshing. It's just like when you're threshing, you are removing the kernels from the ears. That's what he learns. So when the tree was loaded and you lightened up the tree, that's an act of mefadik and chai for both. Rav Ashi Amar, I argue with both. Loizeh v'loizeh. Ein derech talisha b'kach, ve'ein derech perika b'kach. That's the shaloi kedarkoi heter. When you harvest, that's not the way you harvest by throwing earth. When you do an act of toirei, it's all shaloi kedarkoi, and that in itself exempts that action completely from an iser d'oraisa. Any action of Shabbos, any chilul Shabbos, shaloi kedarkoi, is generally included in the iser d'rabanan, but not chayiv chatas. We have to move on. Let's chap at least another few lines. I wanted to get further, but we'll have to stop early. Gathering. Amar says, if you are gathering salt from salt ditches, so right near, let's say the Yam HaMelech, right near very salty waters, it would make ditches through which water would run when the tide is high. And that water would become disconnected from its source. So now you have this puddle of water. The sun is shining. The sun makes the water evaporate. And in these ditches, you have now salt. So if a person is gathering salt from these ditches, he's chayiv because of ma'amer. He gathered. Abaye Amar, no. And when you start learning the sugis, you appreciate this concept that l'chora imur is also like a malacha gerua. What am I gathering? Like, where do you draw the line? You're not changing anything. At least we're having one definition, abaya, that it's only shayach on something that's geduli karka. I want to learn one more. Hadosh, threshing. Tana we learned. Saying dosh, threshing is the word that's used when you're doing it to grain. Mahamenapates is when you have flax and you have to beat the flax. It should be separated from its stalks. Bahamenafate is when you have cotton and you strike it so the seeds should separate themselves from the cotton. Again, it's not a tulda. It's the same act. There's another word because it's another article that's kula malacha achasein, and we'll have to stop over here and God willing continue tomorrow. Wow, very easy. We have very big kolam here. All right,
Rabbi, there's so many of these that are so similar to each other.
Oh, you're going to ask it right now. It's a pity. Mamish, look inside. That's going to be the kash. There's a lot of nuance here. We're going to the Mishnah. Yeah. Whatever was chashav in the Mishnah, but then we're not speaking about the Mishnah at all. We're speaking about Siddur de Pas. And when it comes to Siddur de Pas, the Mishnah left out an activity that you do to make bread. Pounding. Whatever. I really wish to get a little bit further to speak at the Maram, but we'll do that tomorrow. Sake.
Wait, question. Why is Sasam Shabbos something that it's the last in the Mishnah, and it's the first thing that Masechus Shabbos talks about?
One more time.
You talk about from Rishon